And getting cut from that team at the time was more devastating to me or just as devastating to me than when I broke my neck. Because again, I got that athlete identity ripped away. Well, you're not a captain. You're not going to be a two-time Paralympian. You're not going to go to Rio. You don't get to finish what you had just started way back in December of 2008. And it was devastating. But it was also the most important fork in the road that I've had in my life as a husband, as a father, as an athlete, as a leader, as a speaker, because through that, I still had to go back to training camp and have the same character and make that team better as an alternate. I had to be a leader without the leadership title. A lot of people are waiting around for titles. No, you don't need to wait around for a title. Like, you have your gifting inside of you already. Go and do it.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of the Roughnecks podcast. I am your host, Cole Nixon. I try to bring on and interview successful people in the world of business, entrepreneurship, athletics, and coaching every week to share their stories and the lessons that they have learned. If you haven't already, be sure to head over to Instagram and follow us at Roughnecks Podcast and Twitter at Roughnecks Pod C1. We are also on Facebook at Roughnecks Podcast. Be sure to grab the bull by the horns, but let's get into this week's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Roughnecks Podcast. This is episode 34 and our first episode where we will be discussing the topic of adversity. I'm excited for this month. This month is going to have some really good episodes because adversity really talks about a lot. There's a lot of great stories that come from adversity and people powering through them. And I have a great guest to discuss this topic this week, and I'm super excited to get into it. So let's just dive right into it. Welcome to the Roughnecks Podcast, Joe Delagrave.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
Not a problem.
Be on, man. The episode 34. Let's do this.
Yeah, I actually met you. Well, I put "met" in quotes because,
right.
But through this new networking and social media app. I think it's newer. At least it's new to me. It's called I forgot the name. Clubhouse, actually.
Yeah, Clubhouse.
Yeah, there we go. And I just want to say, for a side note, if you're like a podcaster, content creator, really anything, I definitely recommend Clubhouse because it's a great connection app. And you never know who you're going to run into. It's crazy because my professor got me on it, and I got on and was like, I think I met you like the second day I was on it. And I was like, all right, I'm in love. I like this already. Just to get the episode started, tell the Roughnecks listeners a little bit who you are. And I was going to listen to a few podcasts that you've been on to hear your story, but I wanted to hear it firsthand and kind of go off that and base the conversation off that. So just tell us who you are to start.
Absolutely, man. Well, to everyone that's listening, my name's Joe Delagrave, and I'm a father and a husband, first and foremost. A husband to April. I'm a father to my three kids who are 9, 7, and 5, Braxton, Braden, and Brinley. I'm a Paralympic wheelchair rugby player and a keynote speaker. And so those are my main hats that I wear throughout the days and weeks and months. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. Yeah.
So we're going to start. We're going to kind of just walk through this story of yours because from the sounds of it, you have an incredible story. You've been through a lot and powered through a lot. Originally, we'll start here though. You went to play football originally in college, correct?
I did. Yeah. So growing up, I loved sports and I loved to be a part of a team. Number one, because you get built-in affirmation from a team, and that, I learned later in life that was a huge love language of mine, affirmation. So, but you get that constant feedback, whether it's constructive criticism or praise or whatever it would be. And so, and my biggest goal in high school is to just play a college sport. I didn't matter if it's D3, D2, of course, everyone wants to play D1, whatever, but ended up playing D2 for Winona State University, which is in Winona, Minnesota. Played as a tight end there. And yeah, it was just love and life. Freshman year, played as a true freshman. My my first freshman football practice in college was a complete, like, how you want to make a good first impression, right? It was the opposite of a good impression. It was I was lined up playing 7-on-7 drills, doing my thing, right? And get all the offensive and defensive linemen out of there and get the athletes in there. Just kidding. I'm sure someone's gonna be mad about that one, but that's fine. No, and so we're playing 7-on-7 drills. So we're lined up, tight ends are lined up against linebackers. And I don't know, were you a linebacker?
No, I was a safety.
Okay. All right. You got that linebacker hair though. Maybe, yeah, you're a
Yeah.
hard-hitting safety. Yeah, for sure. But I was lined up. I was a freshman. I'm 18. I just left my parents' house, and across the field from me playing defense is a guy named Derek Seek. He was a 5th-year senior, 2-time All-American dude, like long hair, and just that picturesque linebacker that is like, I'm not gonna think at all on the field. I'm just gonna do. And like, you get a little drool running down the face, that's the whole thing. And so I'm like, what, I just got I got an easy 5-yard in route. I'm gonna be good to go, right? And so I do my 5 yards, cut in, catch the ball. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, like, hell yeah, let's, we're absolutely. And he had just been waiting for me to catch the ball, comes up, absolutely depletes me, ball bounces out. And I'm laying there just going like, this is awful. The offensive teams like, man, get up, show them you're not hurt, and defense is just cheering on like you. And I get up, and man, I'm like seeing Tweety birds. Dude. I probably got concussed. And I go back to our huddle, and I'm trying to jog back like, oh, I'm not hurt. Well, I went to the defensive huddle. Like Derek and the defense were like, bro, you got to go over there. Like, it was the worst first impression. But thankfully had a good camp and played as a true freshman. And that whole year was great, man. Like that whole year, my identity was wrapped up into being an athlete and playing college football. And then that's when the story kind of goes a different route.
Well, if you got that welcome to college football moment, because I think every freshman has that moment and they can almost pinpoint exactly when it is. And I mean,
true.
My big one was the first game we had, and it was a night game. First time we've had a night game in I don't know how long. And very first game, and I'm on kickoff return, and I get my drop, and I go to block, and I just get leveled. And I was just like, all right, this is college football. Like, all right, this is how it's going to be. But
exactly.
yeah, I mean, that everybody gets that wake up call because, people, even D3, people are like, oh, it's D3. Like, there's still, like, doesn't matter what division you go, there's still a lot of great athletes there.
100%. And every single one of them is committed, right? Like in high school, I'm just off the team, whatever. But college is no joke for sure.
I've always said that college football is like a full-time job, or college sports in general. It's like it's worse than a 9-to-5 is what some people I've talked to said. It's a crazy, I mean, you're trained. I mean, you still know what it's like when you're training for a sport and like, you're just constantly doing something with that sport.
Yep.
So, and then you had the accident. Take us through what exactly happened.
Yeah. So, what happened is in between my freshman and sophomore years, I go back home, like most freshmen do, go back home to your hometown, get a job, whatever. So that's what I did. I had an amazing job with the city. I just drove a truck around and hung out. And then my best friend Kyle got a job with the city too. I was with the Parks and Rec department, so I just drove truck around, checked chlorine levels, river levels. We grew up right on the Mississippi River that borders Wisconsin and Iowa, and he got the weed whacking job, so he had to do 8 hours of just trimming bushes and all that crap. It was awful, man. I just drove by him all the time, making fun of him, the whole thing, like, and doing this thing. It was a terrible job for him. But on the weekends, we'd always jump out on the boat and kneeboard and fish or whatever. And you grew up in a river town, you're always out on the river, or at least a couple times a month or whatever it would be. And so most weekends during that summer, we're out hanging out and on the river. And we're in a back slough, so just in the back where the water's a little bit more calmer than the main channel, so we can kneeboard a little bit more efficiently and all that good stuff. And so that day, July 10th, 2004, Adam is my other best friend growing up in the same town on Ohio Street in Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin. Adam is kneeboarding. Kyle's driving the boat. I'm chilling with my hands behind my head, enjoying the day, sitting in that pole bass fishing chair seat. And just chilling. Kyle accidentally hits the bottom of the river, and I fly backwards, hit my head on the front of the boat, inside the boat, and break my neck at the C6 and 7 level on impact. And so in a split second, I go from 6'6", 260 pounds, being, my identity wrapped up in being a football player, to something's terribly wrong. And I didn't know it at the time. Obviously, I'm thinking, oh, obviously I'm injured. I'm in a lot of pain. But I don't think about paralysis or permanency, or, I'm thinking, hey, we got camp in a month. I get geared up to be back at camp and fight for that starting position. And remember going from our boat to the rescue boat to the ambulance into the hospital, where they started kind of explaining what was going on, and they did some tests and said, Joe, you've had a spinal cord injury. And I'm like, what? What? Okay. And they're like, hey, we got to helicopter you up to the local regional hospital where they can have the surgeons there to take you to surgery, fuse your neck, and go from there. So that was kind of like the blur of that day. A couple days later, I'm coming to and remember things, and just remember the doctors coming in. My parents were in the room, and the doctor's like, Joe, you had a spinal cord injury. You had 5 hours of surgery. We fused you in the C6 and 7 level, and you should be good to go. And I'm like, doctor, what's this mean for me? What's going on? And he goes, Joe, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you're not going to walk again. You got like a 3% chance of ever walking again. And I'm like, oh, okay. And at the moment I'm like, screw you. Like, there's no way. Right. And you feel invincible at that age. At 19 years old, you feel invincible, but you also have questions swirling around in your head. Like, am I going to find a job that I love and that's I'm passionate about and have purpose in, and finding that, is this girl that I'm with right now going to stay with me? Am I going to have kids? Am I going to I'm going to finish school? Like all these questions swirling around. And, for me, one of them too is just like, why, God? Like, I'm angry at God for putting me in this situation. I'm angry at, a little bit at Kyle too, if I'm being honest, like, and I'm just kind of going like, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't my fault. And, what's going to happen? And I had these, those questions kind of swirling in my head. My mom's even asking the doctors if like, hey, is my boy going to be able to have sex? I need grandkids. And I'm like, Mom, get the hell out of my room. Like, no one wants to talk to
yeah, no one wants to hear that when you're talking to the doctors.
Exactly. So I had to kick her out and then talk to the doctor and be like, hey, what's the deal with this? Is this thing going to work or what? And so that was the gravity of the situation, where you go from, entering your room and you're looking over most people and loving life and living out kind of your goal and dream that you had in high school, and all of a sudden it's gone.
What was your mindset at that time? Because like, I feel like, I know I didn't have as bad of an injury as you. I broke my elbow in my senior year of football, and I did the same thing when the doctor's like, "Oh, you're not going to play the rest of the season." And I said, "But I literally looked at him and I said, are you sure? Like, are you want to bet?" Like, you never believe it. Like, you're that young kid. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. But like, I know once it kind of hit me, like, wow, I'm not playing, or like, and stuff's not going the way I want it to. Like, what was your mindset? Were you in a slump? Like, I feel like you had to have almost gone in a slump for a little bit.
Yeah, man. So like, it's 100%. It's not all. I'm a pretty positive guy, but it's not all rainbows and butterflies type of thing. At that time, I was confused and didn't understand why, and trying to like have a good attitude, but at the same time, like I said, I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm like, and then confused, like what's the purpose in this? Like, why do I have to be in this wheel? And I remember just being in my bedroom and just, man, like, and not my bedroom, in the hospital room, and laying in that bed, and I could barely move anything at that point. I may move my right arm a little bit. Everything else was paralyzed. So physically, obviously stuck and paralyzed. But the other thing is just mentally feeling trapped, spiritually feeling trapped. Like everything was just, I'm in this bed and I can't get out. And there's no way out of this. And that's kind of, I'm looking at my toe, just sending the signal down through my spinal cord, like you do when I'm, moving my hands right now. And you don't even think about it. And it's like, like make just show me a sign, like anything, wiggle a toe, whatever, like anything to let me know it's okay. And it's a weird deal, man. Like, and I don't know how much your audience is a like believer in God or whatever, and they don't have to be, but like I am, and so it's part of my story. And a week before my accident, I got this Bible verse that was really weird. I was on a Don Beebe House of Speed camp shirt. I don't know if you remember Don Beebe or not, a little before your time, but Buffalo Bills receiver, won a Super Bowl with the Packers. Little white dude. He was like Wes Welker and Julian, yeah, that before they were. And he lived in Wisconsin, had this camp, but I got the shirt from my kicker freshman year when I forgot my shirt underneath my pads to our game. And I'm like, does anyone got a shirt? Like, I don't want to chafe under there. I'm not going raw dog on that thing. No way. And so the kicker's like, here you go, Joe. Cause they all made fun of me. I was like a cheeseburger away from being a tackle. Like looking back, like my broken neck probably saved me from having to play on the offensive line. But it's, so they gave me that shirt and as a joke, I'm like, I'm not giving that thing back. And a week from my accident on July 3rd, I was wearing it in this camp. I was working a basketball camp at my local school in my hometown, and dude's like, what's that Bible verse saying? I'm like, I don't know, like what like and he's like, oh, Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him and he'll direct your paths. And for me, like I was just angry. I looked at that and I'm like, no, like I remember coming to with the accident and remembering that verse. And then my sisters kind of wrote it on some cute little Pinterest Etsy thing like girls do and throw it on the wall. And I wanted to like take it down. I'm like, no way. Like I'm so angry and so mad at what's going on. And there's no way. And so that was the mindset right away is this sucks. I'm angry. I want questions answered. And I want to know if there's a way forward. People tell me and nurses in the hospital, like you're gonna have to stick a catheter in your penis every day, 5 or 6 times a day. And you're at 19, you go, what? Like,
Yeah.
wait, no, I'm not doing that. There's no way. But that's the real thing, man. I like to be vulnerable. So I know like that's a little graphic, but at the same time, like that's the thing in this, it's not just a wheelchair, it's other stuff. It's like figuring out how to poop when you're paralyzed, figuring out how to calf. And so pee gets out of your bladder. And it's a lot of overwhelming things. And that's what I was just overwhelmed with that. But I will say on a side note with that is that, I never took a depression medication. I still haven't. And I think what helped me along this path was the people in my circle. It's really, really important to have people in your life to speak into your life and be there for you, whether it's to lift you up when you need it or pull you back when you need it. And for me, that was my now wife, April. She was my girlfriend at the time. And stayed with me in the hospital 89 straight days. I had people, really close friends at Winona State, some guys and girls up there that were 100% like they, instead of going out on Saturday night and going to the, whatever we do on Saturday nights in college, right? And going and partying or whatever, like they did, hey, let's call Joe, let's talk to him, or let's go down to half hour, 40-minute drive and go see me on the weekends instead of doing what we like to do in college. And my parents and my football teammates in college and in my so a lot of my classmates in high school, and just so many overwhelming people coming in saying it's going to be okay, saying you can get through this, being able to talk to people through that. And so for me, it was so important. I'm proud of the things that I've accomplished, but I wouldn't do it without that circle of people that are going to say, you know what, like, Joe, get your butt in gear. You got to get to therapy. Or Joe, you know what? Like, hey, man, maybe we should just keep it. Let's just talk, or whatever it would be. But that inner circle is really important in anyone's life, because when they go through something, which we all go through something, it might not be a wheelchair, but we all go through stuff. We all go through adversity, like your theme is this month. And when you hit that rough patch, the people inside your boat when you're going through that are going to be the people that help you make it or break it.
And you need those people in your life. They are like your biggest supporters. And that's when you go through a tough time in life, I feel like, I can think of every tough time that I've gone through, who's there. And those are the real people in your life. Yeah. And it's usually these might not even be people that you talk to every day, but when like you're going through a difficult time, they're like the first people there. And it's crazy because that's when you really find out who your true friends are, who your like who those friends that are family, like who they are.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man.
So what was it? When did the mentality then start to change? And when you like, first off, how long was the rehabilitation? Like, how long did that all take?
I mean, it's like almost 2 years, like it's 3 months in the hospital, and then I get home and I move back in with mom and dad, which is like every 19-year-old kid's dream, right?
Yeah.
And now that I have kids, like I'm sure my parents were too thrilled either, having me back. But and then going to outpatient therapy for occupational therapy and physical therapy, and just trying to get stuff back, like trying to. And I remember like kind of going, okay, I'm paralyzed, but like let me do as much as I can with my ability to be able to try to walk again. Like a lot of people are like that end up walking from paralysis. And they're like, well, I worked hard. I'm like, well, okay, that, and there's just some stuff, either healing or whatever happened. It wasn't, there's a lot of us in wheelchairs that work their asses off to try to get to where they're trying to get. And it doesn't happen. It just it wasn't there for them, not because they were lazy or anything like that. But it kind of slowly switched when I realized, like, Joe, the football player, Joe, the 6'6", 260-pound dude, can't get through this by himself. Because I think as men, we try to do it all ourselves. I mean, we pride ourselves on it, man. We are like, you know what? When we mow the grass, we get all puffed up. We're like, yeah, we just mowed that grass. We own that, and then all of a sudden it's like, like sometimes I'll take the trash out and I want my wife to give me a trophy. Like that's, as men, we're just like, man, we're going to do it. We're going to get greased up. We're gonna muscle up, and we're gonna, and then we're looking for that affirmation around from, a girlfriend or a wife or anyone that will tell us, pat us on the back type of thing. But I realized I couldn't do it by myself because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why this was happening. And so for me, that was when it was like, I need to trust that God has a plan for my life. So when I started to do that, I go, you know what? I get a choice in this. I can get in this wheelchair and figure out life and moving forward. I remember a really sobering time in the hospital. It was getting close to where everyone was going back to college. And, all the way through the summer, from July 10th all the way through the end of August, everyone had, came and supported me and whatever. And so when I'm laying in that hospital bed and people slowly start leaving and saying, hey, Joe, we'll see you at fall break, or we'll see you when we can, but we're going back to school. And life was moving on. And I was just stuck. And I'm like, if I don't try to press forward, if I don't try to, trust in what God has, but at the same time, like, take some personal responsibility and get out of bed and start living life, then life's just going to pass me by. There's a lot of people, like, not even being in a hospital room or not even being paralyzed. There's a lot of people that sit on the sidelines and wait for their opportunity, or wait for something to come along that seems right. Even though inside of themselves, they know what they're called to do. They know what their purpose is, or where their passion is, and trying to find that passion and purpose intersect. They know it, yet they still sit on the sidelines. And so for me, I was like, you know what, I'm going to get in this wheelchair. And first, before that, it was like, all right, I'm gonna get in this wheelchair, but I was completely dependent on other people helping me, helping me with bowel programs. I was like, what the hell's a bowel program? And, telling me about all that stuff and figuring that out, and helping me get dressed. But I'm 19, like, I don't want to shower with some like weird lady, like, washing my body. Like, I want to figure this out, And so it was slowly starting to make choices to come to, but I had a struggle mentally, a hurdle that I didn't get over for about 1.5 2 years of being in a wheelchair, being a man with a disability, taking pictures in my wheelchair, being out in public in my wheelchair. But again, I had people around me that would, hey, let's go play poker at the local whatever club, and or let's go to the American Legion and hang out, or let's go do karaoke, whatever. Like, people would come to my house, literally drag me out of the house, like, let's go do something. And so that was amazing to do, because it ripped the Band-Aid off, and it made me realize that, you can sit on the sidelines and life passes you by, or you can start making choices to get up and do things that align with your passion and purpose.
And those opportunities are never just going to appear. That's one thing that I've slowly started to learn. I mean, I'm only 22 right now, and I've slowly started and I've listened to other people who have done great things, and those opportunities are not just going to come out of nowhere. You have to make your own opportunities. You have to go out and get it. Otherwise, you are just going to sit there and watch
Yes.
everything just pass by.
Yes, I think a lot of people are like, well, people, first of all, people listen to people too much. Like if I listen to, someone say, when I first was like, hey, I want to be on Team USA and make the rugby team, and they're like, dude, I mean, no way, like you're completely out of shape. There's no like whatever, and no, like no, this is what I want. This is my goal, and now I need to align my behaviors and actions up with this goal. And you're absolutely right, dude. I mean, you're crushing it at 22 years old. You're like, I'm just gonna making this podcast for a class, and all of a sudden it's ballooned up into something amazing. And it's because you said, you know what, let me just take a step, another step. Everyone's like, oh, I can't take a leap of faith, it's too dangerous. No, it's not. It's just a step. You're not jumping out of an airplane. You're just taking a step toward what you want to do, and what your purpose to do. And it's amazing, dude. It's great to see young guys like you just saying let's go, let's do it, let's rock and roll with it. If you fail, everyone thinks failure is some big deal. No, if you fail, then you get a choice again to choose to listen to those thoughts of like, oh, you're less than, you're not enough, you're a failure, you're a loser, you're not going to be successful. Or you say, all right, I had a setback, let's choose victory still. Let's choose to find look in the mirror, have some personal responsibility, and keep charging ahead.
Yeah, and those steps, they don't have to be these big giant steps. Like it could be the littlest things. When I first started this podcast, I was doing people that I knew very well and that I could easily get. And then like I started taking those chances, all right, I'll DM this person. I'll message this person. Man, I DM people all the time who never respond or even just say no. All right, you move on with your day, whatever.
Yeah.
And like the thing is too, I've talked about this multiple times on this podcast. This is not my first podcast. This is my second attempt at a podcast. Like I failed on my first podcast, and it's okay to fail because guess what? I learned a lot from that failure.
Yes.
Those failures will teach you more than your successes ever will.
Yes, 100%.
But you went on and now you're wheelchair rugby. How did you get started into the wheelchair rugby?
Yeah, so that year and a half, 2 years, a year at home. And in that process, at a year at home, my mom was taking care of me for the most part, helping me shower, all this. I mean, way too bless her heart for doing it, but it's a struggle. We fought a lot, and there's a lot of stuff that I probably took out on her that I'm not proud of at all. But you back and forth. She's got this son that's 19 and in a wheelchair, and now she's taking care of him. And I'm just like, this sucks. Like you feel like the smallest person on the planet when yet your mom has to take care of you and you're 19 years old. And so I'd broken up with April for a little bit. Not a smart choice, but it ended up being a smart. But I like there's another girl, and I was trying to figure out like who I was in a wheelchair, and I don't know if I love April as much as she loves me or whatever it would be, and realized very quickly that was a big mistake, and went pursuing her after that.
Well, you're also at that like weird point in life where you're still young, trying to figure things out, and then you add this on top of it, and it's just a big like trying to figure a lot out all at once.
Yeah. So we ended up getting engaged when we were 20, married when we were 22. And so we've been married for almost 14 years now, which is crazy. But anyway, so her, and then, the reason I said that is because at that point I was like, I need my wife to be my wife. I don't need my wife to be my caretaker. And that's really what started to trigger some of those like thoughts of I need to be independent. Like I need to do this by myself. And so it started with, like you said, it's small goals. All right. So we got small goals, right? And it's important to have little goals because those little goals can start getting checked off. It's like a list that you want to cross off, and you feel pretty good when you're starting to cross off 3 or 4 things. For me, I was like, I need to just learn how to put my socks on and my shorts on and my shirt on. I need to learn how to push my wheelchair around the block. I need to learn how to transfer in and out of a car by myself and drive independently. And I need to figure out how to cath myself so I can go hang out with my buddies and not have to worry about someone trying to help me cath when we're hanging out, and things like that were small goals. And it wasn't even like towards sports yet, but it was just, can I go to the grocery store by myself? Can I can I go hop in my car and go visit my buddies in college or whatever it would be. And so that was like the first steps of that. And then rugby came along from my buddy Kyle, who was driving the boat that day. He was talking to me. He's like, Joe, dude, you should probably lose some weight. And I'm like, well, that's not very nice to say. And he's like, well, maybe we should weigh you. And he's trying to be really nice about it in a loving way, but he's like, dude, you're fat and you need to stop being fat. Otherwise you're not gonna be able to like go anywhere or do anything. It's really unhealthy. And so again, having those people in your life that can speak into it, and I need someone to pull me back and say, hey man, you need to figure this out. Went to the hospital, jumped on the bed. It's like a scale bed or whatever. So you jump on that and it said 283 pounds. I'm like, your bed's broken. There's no way that I'm 283 pounds. Your bed's ruined. And the nurse was kind enough to just, you know what, let's get you back in your wheelchair and we'll zero it out again just to make sure. So we did that. And then the next time it said 284. And I'm like, well, okay, I get your point, Kyle. I understand what you're saying. And that's when I first started to look for adaptive sports because I thought they were pathetic. I thought, like, as you know, I mean, I was just ignorant and I was like, oh, like these adaptive sports are nothing. Like, who cares? Like, with being in a wheelchair and like playing a sport, that's not gonna quench my competitive desires and fires, and no way. And so I looked up wheelchair sports, and long story short, I ended up finding wheelchair rugby, which was called Murder Ball. And there was a video on it, and I clicked on it, and I'm like, this thing is nuts. These people in wheelchairs smashing into each other and rolling over their hands and all this stuff and falling over. And I'm like, these crippled people are bizarre. Let's sign up for that bad boy. Let's go find a practice. And so we drove up from Winona, Minnesota, up to Minneapolis, Minnesota, a place called Courage Center. And I ended up practicing that night with them, and it changed my life. It was being in a group of people. And as an athlete, when you're in a team environment, when you're in that locker room, some really good conversations can happen. Some brotherhood can form. It's almost like a support group for people that don't like them, right? Like, it's just an amazing deal. And like, that's what I started to see. Like, oh, these guys are talking about fun stuff like sex and whatever it would be, right? Like normal locker room talk. But then it was also, hey, Joe, you look really crippled in your chair. Let's help you out with some of this stuff. Like, you don't need to look that disabled, dude. And I have less function than you, Joe. So you should probably be able to do this, this, and this. So it was starting to be challenging. So right away, it was more rehabilitative than it was like any elite level athlete type deal for me. But that first practice really changed my life and started to make me understand that I could achieve more than just being independent in a wheelchair.
Then you worked your way up to Team USA. How did that all happen? And when did you decide like to make that choice to pursue that too? Because I mean, you're a competitor. It's obvious you played football. I mean, any athlete, if you're playing a sport, you're a competitor. But like, where did that decision come from? And like, I guess, how did that happen?
Yeah, before I found rugby, like my biggest thing was like, I want to walk. I had leg braces built that basically straightened my legs out completely where there's no bend, and tried to walk with a walker. And like nothing would return or come back. And like that had been my goal. I told people about it. I'm like, I want to walk. I thought, man, I'm going to have this amazing story of getting out of this wheelchair and then going on and speaking and doing things and whatever it would be. And it never happened. And then wheelchair rugby came along. I remember watching 2008 Beijing Paralympics where wheelchair rugby won gold for Team USA. And man, I was like, I want to do that. So that was when it happened in September 2008. I was like, this is a goal of mine. This is what I want to do. I told some people about it. So I think it's really important when you have goals, like you have to tell someone about it. Otherwise it's not a goal. It's a dream. Dreams are great. But if you're not like, it's just a dream. Maybe you tell people about your dreams too, but it's just a dream. But goals, you need accountability, and you need to tell people that are close to you in your life. Otherwise, there's no accountability, and it's really easy to be like, well, that really wasn't my goal anyway. I didn't really tell anyone, And so I told people, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. And they're like, well, you need to stop being 285 pounds, whatever it was. And so I had to lose close to about 90 pounds over the course of 3 or 4 years. Worked my butt off getting in front of coaches and athletes that knew what they were doing with the rugby. And it was a slow process. And there was setbacks. Like I made the team in 2009 at my first tryout, but then I got cut from the team that was going to the actual like big tournament that year, our big competition, and got cut and was devastated. But then it's like, all right, I'm gonna keep going, and got cut in 2010. And I'm all right, I'm gonna keep working hard. I moved from Minneapolis down to Phoenix to train with 3 other Paralympians because they were just like, hey man, we see potential in you. You should come down here. I'm like, talk to April, and she's like, yeah, let's do it. And so we moved cross country. Like people want comfort sometimes over success. Like people are cool with just being like, all right, well, I know this is comforting and I can work my 9 to 5 and that's great. Like if that works for you, that's great. But sometimes like when you want something, you're going to have to, there's going to be some risks. There's going to be some opportunities where you are going to fail. But like if you want something, you have to chase it, pursue it. Everyone says, you're pursuing your dreams or your goals. Like pursue, if you look it up in the dictionary, it talks about running towards, attacking towards, following after. It's an action. You're pursuing. It's an absolute action towards something. And a lot of people go, well, if it just like he said, if it comes along, I'll just wait for the opportunity. No, like the opportunity is probably already there. And if you're gonna wait, then you're probably gonna be too late. And so that's kind of what happened with that. And again, I think probably more so than me showing up and having a good tryout that first time, it was my response in failure. Like your response in failure, whether you play the blame game or the victor card, is what defines you. It's going to define your character. It's not 100%. Yeah, man. It's not the circumstances. It's not like the things outside of your control that define you. It's your response to them. A lot of people are going, oh, well, this happened to me and never. Okay. Well, nobody cares. Like at the end of the day, like, what are you going to do at this? And there's times to pause and have grief and whatever it is. I'm not trying to be cold, but at the same time, like there's power in understanding that you have a personal responsibility towards yourself to react a certain way to failure. And that's going to define your character. Your character is your actions in life and what you do. Your reputation is maybe something that you build up online or whatever it would be, but your character shines through because of the actions that you make when you fell down. And so, man, like that's what started me off on this journey. And it's been a pretty amazing ride wearing Team USA and the red, white, and blue.
You said something about the comfort zone that really stuck out to me. And there was a quote that I heard one time, I think it said like, no true greatness happens in the comfort zone. And that like, those failures, they almost like it fueled you. It gave you more of a reason to prove people wrong. Like that's what I talked about it. I think 2 episodes with a guy, he just started his own business. He's like, you have all these people that tell you no, that tell you like that, tell you doubt you that. And he's like, a lot of people don't like those people, but you got to love those people. Because those are the people that you get to look at when you make it because they are fueling you. And when you make it, you just go, you don't even have to say anything. You let the results speak for themselves. And it's crazy. Like, you go from getting cut, and then like, you don't stop. You just keep going. Because imagine if you did stop, your story would be a lot different if you just gave up.
Yeah. 100%.
But you went on, you even got yourself a bronze medal, correct?
Yeah. So we got the bronze in London 2012. I used to call it the brown poopy medal because it was the wrong color, and it sucks. So we were USA wheelchair rugby was ranked number 1 from 2005 through 2012. Like maybe lost like 3 games that entire span. So we were heavily favored going into London, and ended up choking against Canada in the semifinals, which Canada USA and anything is literally you could play checkers and it'd be a rivalry. Mm-hmm. And lost by 1. It was an amazing game where we absolutely just crapped all over the floor. The first quarter, we're down by 8 points. Goals in wheelchair rugby are 1 at a time. There's no like, touchdown, 7 points, whatever. In wheelchair rugby, it's 1 point at a time. We're down by 8. Like that's a blowout after 4 quarters, let alone first quarter. Fight all the way back, get it tied. It was going to be like the Mighty Ducks theme music playing and everything. Disney's going to make a movie about it. And then we turn the ball over. They score and win the game. So it was like, we call it the anti-Disney game because it was just, it was awful. Played Japan that next day and won bronze. And 9 years later, like that bronze medal represents to me the success that I've had. It represents, the response to when something that you don't think is going to happen does happen and doesn't go your way. And then you respond to it. And like that tournament, we responded to it in 2016, after 3 years as a captain, and 2014, best player at world championships, 2012 and 2015, player of the year. And in 2016, I get cut from going to Rio. Like I had tunnel vision on gold, gold, gold. Gold was going to validate me as a husband, as a father, as like everything in my life was tunnel visioned on that. And as an athlete, like sometimes that's good, like that's virtuous. But for me, I was finding my value and my worth in an outcome of what I would receive as a medal. And getting cut from that team at the time was more devastating to me than, or just as devastating to me than when I broke my neck. Because again, I got that athlete identity ripped away. Well, you're not a captain. You're not going to be a two-time Paralympian. You're not going to go to Rio. You don't get to finish what you had just started way back in December of 2008. And it was devastating. But it was also the most important fork in the road that I've had in my life, as a husband, as a father, as an athlete, as a leader, as a speaker. Because through that, I still had to go back to training camp and have the same character and make that team better as an alternate. I had to be a leader without the leadership title. A lot of people are waiting around for titles. No, you don't need to wait around for a title. Like, you have your gifting inside of you already. Go and do it. And so even though it took a long, long time, I realized like my value and worth isn't in a medal. My value and worth is who I am as a father, and who I am as a husband, and who I am as a servant leader, who I am in my faith. And man, like I think a lot of times when you get punched in the face repeatedly from some stuff, you start to believe it, that you're less than, that you're not enough, that you're a loser, that you're a failure, that you're never going to make it. And like, we get a choice to delete those out, like swipe those away. Like they're an app on your phone, just swipe them out, delete them, whatever you need to do, because you don't have to believe that. Like, there's another way forward. And for me, I was like, you know what, let me see where I'm at inside my own four walls with my relationship with my wife and my kids. And how can I be a better leader this next time around? How can I be, who God's called me to be as a speaker? And realizing like, it doesn't really matter that in some ways, like the 2016 thing is a huge part of it's a huge part of my story. It is, but it's like it needed to happen for me to kind of understand where I'm at. And so the last 5 years now, with Tokyo being postponed, has been an amazing ride, and helping build a foundation within our program, helping build a rock solid marriage and a relationship with my kids. That's number one priorities. Being a leader that is serving people and getting to know people on the team more than just like, is this person going to help me win gold? And so those second chances in life are needed and can be pretty amazing. So heading in 9 years later, our selection camp is coming up in a couple weeks on May 22nd. And that's when I'll like officially find out. I think I got a pretty good shot, but yeah, 9 years later, and you wait for that. It's a long, long time. But I'm a different person than I was in 2016, and just understand where my purpose is and where my passion is. And man, it's been beautiful. It's been really neat to be able to do that. Think throughout the years, and because of the choices I've made, because of putting trust in my faith and in my family and friends supporting me, I think it's like 13 gold medals, 4 silver, 4 bronze internationally. And it's just been an amazing ride where there's been some success, but also just those looking back, it starts with a step and another step and another step. It doesn't have to be this big lofty goal right away, and that's all you're doing is chasing that.
Dude, I just got to say this, that to anyone listening, next time that you think like, and I mean, this is including myself, next time at one point in our life, we all sit there and we're like, the world's against us, or we're going through these difficult times. Next time you're going through that difficult time, think of this. Like, think of what Joe is just telling us. Like, you've gone through all this stuff, and then you have this high, and then you go back down, and then then you climb your way back up. We're going to get knocked down. That goes with the slogan of my podcast is grab the bull by the horns, because in my opinion, life's like a bull rider. Like, you're going to get thrown down. You're going to get knocked down. But what are you going to do? Are you going to lay there and let it just walk all over you? Or are you going to get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control? I know, you don't actually get up and ride a bull by grabbing the bull by the horns, but still, it's besides the point. It's just the whole thing of, you're going to get knocked down, but that doesn't, like you've talked about, that doesn't define you. That's not who you are. It's what you do after that. It's your reaction to that. What you do to become better or stay the same. And your story is just, you're an inspiration. You really are. It's crazy. This is just an awesome story. Oh my gosh. This is a great episode. I love this episode. Probably one of my favorites by far.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
But you've also done some speaking. When did you decide that that's what you wanted to do as well, along with all this other stuff? I mean, you probably got a lot going on. I mean, you're on a lot of podcasts, you do some speaking, and you got wheelchair rugby. Like, you got a lot going on. So why did you decide to get into speaking as well?
Yeah, so I did a lot of one-offs on, oh, you should come speak, because I don't know. I call it inspirational porn. Like, some people love to, let's bring the wheelchair guy in so we can feel good about ourselves, type of thing. And that's not what I'm about. When they get slapped in the face, because it's like, I'm gonna challenge you. I want you to take personal responsibility of your life. Look in the mirror and go, you know what? Where am I at? What choices am I making? Am I playing the blame game? Am I finding victory in life? Because a lot of people are going oh, well, that was inspiring because I don't have to sit in a wheelchair like you do. Well, who cares? Yeah, so I did some one-offs, and then after Rio had happened, I was working as a counselor, had my master's in professional counseling, and worked in private practice for about 3 years, including my internship. And we had moved back from Phoenix back to Wisconsin to live closer to family, and kind of trying to figure out stuff. And obviously rugby was still going, but I did a speech for Organic Valley in September of 2018. And afterwards, it was like the aha moment. Like, I love doing this just as much as rugby. And I had not found that in life yet. Like, I just absolutely loved being an athlete and a professional athlete and whatever. Like, it was amazing. And you get used to the weird hours and training and everything like that. But it's kind of that entrepreneurial side where you can do some other stuff along with it. And I realized, wow, I love what I'm doing with speaking, and I get to share my story, hopefully inspire people to inspire themselves. That's my whole deal. And you see it a lot now heading up into Tokyo, but I want to share my message with as many people that will listen as possible. And so, same here, jumping on your podcast, and it might be that one person that needs to hear this, that's going to plant a seed in them. And I never get to see if the flowers are going to bloom up and whatever. But I think it's my job is to go and spread as many seeds as possible, in hopes that people's lives are changed because of it. If I can share vulnerably about some deep, dark stuff, hopefully their lives are changed because of it. And that's, I've realized that's my purpose. Like, rugby and playing sports is amazing, and you've learned so much from sports. But I always say, don't let the sport use you. You use the sport to platform into your next endeavor, whatever that is. But you're going to use that platform for your purpose. And it could be, you could think it's like a small platform. It doesn't matter. Use it, and don't let the sport use you. A lot of times, athletes get turned, and they get at the end of their career, and they're like, now what? I'm just an athlete. I don't know what I'm doing. And so that was kind of the thing too, is before I retire, I wanted to make sure that I'm dialed in with what I want to do next. And so I've been doing full-time speaking since that end of 2018. Obviously with 2020, speaking was set aside for a while with everything going on. But I truly believe that's my life's purpose, is to share my message and talk. I hope it makes people laugh, maybe make some people cry, who knows. And hopefully they are inspired to go look in the mirror and maybe do a life check and see where they're at.
Yeah, I mean, that's like almost the goal of this podcast for me personally. So I connect to you on that. I mean, yours is on a little bit bigger scale, but my thing is, I don't care if I get 10 views or 100,000, as long as it brings some value to like at least one person. As long as it brings some value to someone, then my goal is fulfilled. Like I want to bring value, bring inspiration, bring motivation to somebody out there that's listening. That is my goal. And as long as it's one person, I'm good. If it's more, even better. But I want my thing, like the world we live in today is almost questionable sometimes. Like you got all this negativity almost in this world. And I want, like, we need more positivity. We need more inspiration. We need more good things in this world instead of like, it's hard to watch the news anymore because you turn it on and it's just everything's bad. And we need those good things in our lives.
100%, dude. 100%. Oh man.
I'm going to ask a few closing questions before we get into the best segment, but if you could go back in time anytime and tell yourself one thing, what would it be?
Yeah, great question. I'd always go back to that 19-year-old kid who's angry at God, angry at the situation, mad that this happened to him, sad, confused, questions swirling around in his head, with am I going to find a girl? Am I going to have the kids? Am I going to go back to college? What's life going to look like in a wheelchair? I have to stick this straw looking catheter in my, and those are the questions. And I go back to him and go, man, like you have no idea what's in store for you if you just get in that wheelchair. A lot of times we look for the opportunity on the outside of our problems, on the outside of our surroundings, when the opportunity is right there within us. My opportunity was that wheelchair next to my hospital bed. And all I had to do was get in it. I had to maybe, take some more steps on and learning how to get dressed and learning how to do my everyday cares and learning how to push around the block. But that led to college. That led to a master's degree. That led to being a Paralympian. That led to being married to April and having my 3 kids. And just by making that first choice of, hey, I'm going to jump in this wheelchair and I'm going to see that it's an opportunity. Lately, I've realized that there's been a theme of 3s in my life. And I tell myself there's a theme of 3 that's going to happen. Look for those 3s. At 13 years old was the first 3. I thought I was going to be a speaker. I had no idea like why, but I thought like, man, I'm going to be a speaker. Like when everyone's like, I'm going to be a vet or a doctor, I'm like, I think I'm going to be a speaker. And 6 years later, I break my neck. And on July 3rd, another 3, I got this Bible verse. Bible verse is Proverbs 3. I wanted to have kids. I ended up having 3 kids. I wanted to play sports. That was my passion, and found a sport. And I'm training for my 3rd Paralympics with 3 letters across my chest, USA. My goal was just to be able to play a college sport, drive a bus around in a D2 school. And sometimes we don't even understand what's going to happen in big ways, little ways, whatever it is. But for me, that verse, trust in the Lord, don't lean on our understanding. If it was my understanding, I'd be like, no way, that's way too good. That's way too good. All of a sudden, man, you trust in something bigger than yourself and look at it and look at that 19-year-old kid. I'm like, man, get ready, buckle up, get in that chair and let's go. So you have no idea, man, just get in that wheelchair and figure it out.
That's wild. The 3s, like, when you really start going through the list, it's like, wow, like it's crazy. Things happen for a reason that we don't understand.
Yeah.
But wow. But now with that, I think it's time to move on to my favorite segment on the podcast, which is Motivation Monday. Motivation Monday is the point in the episode where I allow the guest to give our Roughnecks listeners a little inspirational bump as they listen on their Monday morning. I know you probably got something good for this segment, so let's dive into it. What do you got for Motivation Monday?
Motivation Monday. All right, guys. All right, so here's the deal. Like, we love looking at other people's success. We love to look at and compare ourselves. We do it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like whatever, TikTok, like anything. And we look at their numbers and we look at their followers and we look at their content and everything like that. If you are in a boat where you're too scared to put something out there, you're worried about what other people are thinking, stop. Your value and your worth aren't in your likes or your followers or your numbers or your impact. Your value and your worth are you being faithful to what your passion and your purpose is in life. Sometimes we're going to have dry seasons. Sometimes we're going to have spots where we feel like failures, but every single time, choose faithfulness, choose discipline over impact. Choose faithfulness over the numbers. Choose faithfulness and discipline over what you can't see sometimes, and you're going to be successful.
I love that. And with that, that's a great way to wrap up episode 34 of the Roughnecks podcast, the first episode of our adversity segment this month. Thank you, Joe, for coming on and being a guest. Where can people follow you on social media?
Yeah, check me out at Delagrave14 on Instagram. Check out my website if you ever want anyone for a speaker, joedelagrave.com. And yeah, that's where I'm most active on Facebook, LinkedIn, all that stuff too. So yeah, check it out.
Be sure to follow him and support him and Team USA. Thank you for tuning in this week. We will be back next Monday with another episode on our adversity segment. But until then, you know the deal. Life is like a bull and will knock us down. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, just as Joe has done. But until next week, Roughnecks out. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Roughnecks podcast. If you like this episode, be sure to rate and review and then subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. If you'd like to contact me, you can message me on social media at Roughnecks Podcast on Instagram and Twitter at RoughnecksPodC1, or you can shoot me an email at roughneckspodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to grab the bull by the horns, but until next week, Roughnecks out.
Oh, thank you.